Fake surprise. Oh, hello again everybody, and today we're going to be taking another look at the Trio 9R, and we're going to be having a look at building a speaker enclosure. Spoiler. Now surprisingly enough, these radios didn't actually come with speakers installed, and again this is another thing that's just been bodged in. So they didn't arrive with a speaker installed like this. In fact, if you actually wanted to have a speaker for your Trio, you had to buy it separately. It wasn't included in the pack when you bought them. Now the other thing about this optional extra speaker is that it was actually an external speaker. It was another little box that you used to put next to the receiver. Now I don't know whether or not this radio, you know, the previous owner, if he ever had the speaker, but certainly what a lot of people used to do is they actually used to take just any old speaker and they used to screw it to the inside of the cabinet like this. Well, this is wrong, you know, it wouldn't have come from the factory like this, and there is a problem with doing it like this. These radio receivers, they suffer terribly from, I'm going to call it micophony. Basically, what you'll find is that when this speaker beats, when it does what a speaker does, when it vibrates, that vibration gets induced into the valves, and it also actually gets induced into the wiring, especially around the coil box. Now these radios are terribly sensitive to drifting of the oscillator, and if you actually touch or disturb that wiring, it can actually throw out both the local oscillator and the BFO really badly. So to actually install a speaker, to actually cause the whole body of the radio to shake with audio is a really bad idea. So what I'm going to do is, in fact they're not even screwed on very tightly, we're actually going to take this speaker off, and I'm going to try to build my own little external speaker, again just using what we've got in the garage. Now actually I have got some of these speakers kicking around, these Motorola's, which are quite nice, and they probably, well, they probably don't look too bad, do they? But I think I'd rather have a go at just building something, if nothing else, because it gets me out of the house and gets me in the garage doing something. So that's one of the things that I was going to have a go at today. I was going to have a go at trying to build a little enclosure for a speaker. Now I think I might actually use this speaker, although I've got to admit it does actually look like quite a poor quality one, so maybe I will try to buy well, just a better quality speaker for this, another 4 or an 8 ohm speaker. I haven't decided, maybe we'll just use what we've got to hand, but I think one of the reasons that this radio does sound quite so awful when it's on, when you listen to broadcasting and music, it does sound pretty terrible. Now there's two reasons for that. One of them is because this is a communications receiver, and it's actually very narrow band. It's actually, the bandwidth of the channels is actually pretty limited, and it's designed to be like that, but that does have effects on the quality of the audio. It's not designed to be a high fidelity receiver. But certainly the other thing that isn't helping is the fact that this speaker is just a bit crap. So yeah, we've got to have a think about what we can do for that. And I'm probably going to get some grey paint and touch up these holes. I think it looks better with screws in and the top's painted grey, or just go around the holes that they've left in grey paint. It's got some sharp burrs on it, that. So we'll have to deburr it, and if I can buy some cheap pot of dark grey Humbrol paint or something like that, we'll touch that up, I think. Okay, well I've just been out and had a look in the garage, and I found this old metal box. I think this is a junction box, probably the kind of thing that we used to use at work, and I'm hoping that it kind of looks suitably, I don't know, maybe a mixture of industrial and also, I don't know, like something you might find military. So I'm hoping I can make a speaker housing out of this, and I'm not sure how good a job I'm going to do. You're never sure with these little projects, are you? But I'm using what I have to hand. I'm afraid I also look for a better speaker, because I don't think this is a particularly good one. I could of course go out and buy a better speaker, but again I just decided that I probably wouldn't do that. I'm just using what we've got. I think I've had this box for at least 10 years, and it may as well get used for something as not. So the box does come with a lot of little holes in it, and it also comes with some little plastic grommets that are the kind of blanking plugs, aren't they, that block those holes up. So for example, we could blank up them holes like that. So the first question is, he said as all the grommets and screws roll across the bench, the first question is, which way round shall we actually build this up? Just going to cut that wire off, because if we don't cut it off at some point, it's going to snag and pull the speaker apart. Yeah, it really is a pretty cheap and nasty speaker, this. It's what does it say, 10 watts on it. So the question is, shall we have the speaker mounted on the front of the box? Well, I think that almost answers that. If we try to mount it on the front of the box like that, what will happen is the fixing screws for where this speaker would be installed, they'd be covering these screw holes which actually seal the box. So my first idea was to mount it on the inside of the box like that, maybe poking forward and then cut some slots into the box. It might still be possible to do that. We could grind that earth stud. There's obviously in industry, when you have junction boxes like this, they carry mains wiring, and it's part of the regulation that everything must be earth bonded. So you'll find that junction boxes like this have got an earth stud here, and usually they've got some form of earth stud inside. Maybe it's the back plate here, because when you take the cover off, you should have an earth wire between the back box and the front plate, so it always remains earth. So but that stud is just getting in my way. It probably would just about go though, wouldn't it, if we remove that earth stud? Okay, I'm going to work on this a bit and I'll bring you back when I've done. Well, here's our back box, and as you can see I've gone ahead and I've painted it, but unfortunately I've made a little bit of a mistake in that I forgot to do something. I don't know if you can see, we've got these little lugs which stick up for some totally pointless and annoying reason, and they're going to prevent me from installing the speaker how I want to, because what I was going to do is I'm going to cut out a piece of wood and I'm going to drop it into the top here so that the fixing screws for the front pass through the piece of wood, and then the speaker is going to kind of be screwed to that piece of wood, something like that. But as you can see, these pathetic and annoying little lugs get in the way, which means that what I have to do now is to try to cut them off without actually damaging all the paint and covering everything in metal dust. And of course that's going to be easier said than done probably. So I'm just wondering what the best tools are. I think maybe a hacksaw might be the best approach. Now I'm afraid in a perfect world I'd probably use something like a bit of spray mount or something like that, but don't have any of that, so using stinky old copy decks, which will probably make the paper shrink a little bit, but again we're using this because it's what we've got. So I'm hoping there's a couple of good edges we can pick up on here, which I think there is. That one and that one. Now the reason that I've stuck this template on here is I'm rubbish at marking things out. I've told you that in the past, haven't I? And I find that just a laser printer, just a sheet of paper, for most of the things that I do, a laser printer's got quite good enough tolerance to actually print this out, and I think that will be fine. So what I'm going to use I'm going to use the marks on here to decide where I'm going to drill all my holes and stuff like that, and also where we cut the piece of wood out. I think we might just drill the holes first actually, because it gives me something to hold. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've cut my piece of wood out and I've also drilled it, so that looks as though it's about right. Oh, I've missed one. That's no good, is it? Back on the drill press. As I said, I've gone ahead and I've drilled all the holes in this piece of wood, and of course this almost doesn't quite fit in here perfectly, but you get the idea, something like that. I think we just need to take the corners off it because there's some welds in the corners of these, so it isn't quite dropping down. Might be very slightly oversized. Now if you're wondering how I plan on fixing this in, well, I was going to use a wing and a prayer, an awful lot of hot melt glue, that's the plan. So I think the next thing to cut out is this circle so that I can drop our speaker into here like that. So yeah, let's do that. How queer. Yeah, didn't mean to drop the blade inside there. Ah. Well, that looks something like a speaker, doesn't it? So our speaker enclosure, it's going to assemble something a bit like this, but I think rather than having it flat down on the desk just like that, it'll kind of scratch the bottom edge and the paintwork. I think it needs some kind of feet on it. Now, the original trio speaker that would have accommodated this radio receiver, they actually used to tilt back. They used to have some feet on them. So what I think we need to do, we need to make some feet to go on this speaker enclosure, and that's going to lift it up slightly, and also maybe, you know, just tilt it back at an angle, because I think that'll give us a slightly better effect. So let's go ahead and let's make some of those. Okay, so I've got our box and I've got the feet that I've printed off, so I've just got to drill a couple of holes in our box now and mount our feet on there. Obviously it's important I get them the right way around. About 20 in, is that going to look okay? 20 in. Let's have another go. All I've got to do now is find a 3.5mm drill. Okay, well, I think we're about ready now to do the final assembly. So you can see that we've got these 4 holes here, which I'm going to blank off, but I'm going to use one of these holes. You can see I've already gone ahead and I've stuffed a grommet into it, because that's what we're going to put our lead-in speaker wire through. So where's our feet gone? Here they are. So we've got the radio feet that we printed off on the 3D printer, so I think we'll just have a go at bolting them on and see what it looks like. They're going to go something like that, aren't they? Just hoping that my nut spinner is going to be small enough to get in here. Yep, just fits. Okay, I'm liking that. That kind of just sits back now like some jaunty cockney fellow, doesn't it? Perfect. So I think that's going to look good. Can we just loosely assemble it to see what the effect will be? Probably not, it's just going to fall apart, it's not going to operate, is it? So, it's going to go something like that. Now before we finish off, we've actually got some blanking plugs to fit in here, so I think maybe we'll do that next. Now these blanking plugs do actually form a purpose. When you build a speaker enclosure, obviously you've got a speaker here, and some of the sound, the speaker diaphragm moves forward, and that's, you know, we create a pressure wave, which is all that sound is. It's just a pressure wave. But we actually create an inverse pressure wave at the back of the speaker. Now if you just put this in an enclosure like this, and you've got holes all over your speaker, what will happen is the speaker will move forward, but you'll get an inverse pressure wave inside the speaker, but that pressure wave will leak out. It'll leak out through all these holes here, and what that effect will be is it will actually mix with the forward wave from the front of the speaker, and you'll hear that as some kind of distortion. So we need to try to make sure that our speaker enclosure, we're going to try to make it as airtight as practically possible. So we've got our baffle board here, which we're going to glue down into the front. But before I do that, I'm going to actually stuff this box full of some acoustic wadding. Now, if you've ever opened up an old speaker, if it's a good speaker, you may just find some foam material, or often it looks like cotton wool. And what that is, if you do find it, it is acoustic wadding. Now, we talked earlier about when you have a speaker, you get a forward pressure wave, and you also get an inverted pressure wave that comes out of the back of the speaker. Now, it is a problem if the sound wave coming out of the back of the speaker mixes with the one coming out the front of the speaker. It can cause all sorts of horrible distortion. So what actual speaker manufacturers do, they put some material in here to absorb this reverse waveform, and what that usually consists of, it's either something like, it's kind of an open cell foam rubber, or it might even look like a cotton wool type material. So that's what you put in there. Now, of course, we're in lockdown, so we're using what we have to hand. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any of the proper acoustic wadding, but I do have some, I don't know, some packing filler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a piece of that. Hopefully that should do us. So no elegance here. So I'm hoping that we should be able to stuff this in here now. Is that going to go in? It's maybe just a little bit too deep, because I'm a bit worried that the back of our speaker might actually rub on some of those things. So I think we might just have to reduce the depth of this a little bit. So let me do that a bit. Okay, let's see, is that going to fit any better? Yeah, I think that's going to work quite well now. Now, of course, the other thing that we're going to need is a speaker wire, isn't it? So what I'm going to do is, here's a wire, so let's push this through. There's our grommet. Going to tie a knot in that, very high-tech strain relief, as you can see. Not tying the knot too tight, because we don't want to stop the electrons getting through, do we? Here's our positive one. And there's our negative. So all it needs to do now is hold this down. Now I think my weapon of choice for actually holding this speaker down is actually just going to be hot melt glue, and well, the reason I'm using hot melt glue, again, it comes back to that's what I've got. I probably would have used some form of proper sealer, maybe some kind of adhesive, I don't know, some kind of seam sealer or silicone maybe, but I don't have any, so it's going to get the hot melt glue treatment. So okay, so I've had the glue gun plugged in, so I think it probably was nice and hot. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to heat up the box, because I'm going to put a seal around here with hot melt glue. But what I want is, I want the glue to stay runny enough for me to get all the way around here. So I don't want it to chill too quickly, so I'm just going to heat the metal up a bit. Now usually when we use hot melt glue, I managed to very badly burn my fingers. That's about normal for me. So we'll have to see if I do that again today. It's quite possible. Right, is that going to go? Ow. And just finally, what I think we'll do is we'll just go ahead and we'll install some forked lugs on the end of our cable, just to make it easy to connect and disconnect the back of our receiver. Should we put a bit of adhesive heat shrink on? I think we will. It just finishes the cable ends nicely, doesn't it? So let me do that. Might have been better if this cable had been a grey colour, but I had to use what I had, I'm afraid. I think the original speakers had grey leads on them rather than black, but we're not exactly going for originality. This doesn't look that much like the original speaker. Well, it doesn't look anything like the original speaker, in fairness, does it? But this is just my interpretation of what what a kind of military style tactical speaker may look like. So I'm just using an adhesive heat shrink. So what I do is when I have a number of leads coming out of the wire, you just take a pair of long nose pincers like this, and if you just squeeze the adhesive heat shrink, when it sets, it will actually just separate the wires for you, which I think is quite a nice way to finish it off. Well, on the back of our receiver here, we've actually got a choice of speaker impedance. We've got 4 ohms on these two here, or 8 ohms between that one and that one. And I've got to admit, in all the excitement, I've forgotten to read off what the speaker impedance was. So I'm going to trust that these two marks that I had put on here previously, these are in the 4 ohm side. So I'm just hoping that this is a 4 ohm speaker, because I don't really feel like taking it out now. The question is, do you feel lucky? Well, in fairness, I don't even remember the last time I got lucky, so I guess we better go ahead and check. 3.8 ohms, so near as damn it, 4 ohms.
Stay home and catch up on your favourite programmes. Download the Greatest Hits radio app.
Sunny spells this evening, dry and warm overnight with lows of 12.
That way we can safeguard public health, and we can also safeguard the economy in a sustainable way.
Well, I've got to admit, I actually think that sounds 10 times better. Not does it just sound better, it sounds an awful lot louder. And as I say, the reason I think it sounds louder is because when you have a speaker just mounted in free space, you know, hanging off the back of the chassis, you get as much sound out the back of the speaker as you do out the front. And basically the two waveforms are in opposition to each other and they cancel each other out. So you need to put a speaker in a proper enclosure. Now, I'm not claiming that this is a proper enclosure, because there is actually quite a lot of maths and design that goes behind a really good speaker enclosure, but I hope you can tell that it has made a difference. It sounds a lot louder. The bass has certainly come up. I mean, in fact, this is the first time I've ever needed to turn this receiver down. It's always felt very deaf. I could hardly hear it before, but now I actually have to turn the AF gain down on it because it was actually too loud. So I'm really pleased with that. I think that's great, and I think it looks great. Anyway, you may agree or you may disagree. You can always leave it in your comments. But I think for today, and until next time, that'll do. As always, thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon. But until then, bye-bye for now.
Trio.
Too loud.
Trio.
I said that was too
I
loud.
want a trio and I want one now.
Yeah, well, we all do, man.